everybody, welcome to my channel. It's time for a library haul. So I recently went to the library, picked up a bunch of books. There's actually one that's still pending, and that is Ninth House. I want to reread it in preparation for the second book that just came out, Hellbent, and hopefully I can get through it this time. The first time that I read it, I only got like a couple pages in, probably like 50 pages, so I'm going to give it one more shot. And if I don't like it, I'll DNF it, but I hope I like it. Okay, so here are my library books. They are all obviously laminated to protect them, so not as cute as buying your own at Barnes & Noble, but honestly, the library is a really good resource, and I get to return these books and take up more books. The first one we have is Mistborn. I've talked about this recently. It's by Brandon Sanderson, who is so good at world building. I'm only like 30 pages into this book and I'm already hooked. And his novels tend to start with like maps and all that, so you know it's a little bit intricate and you know the world building is just gonna be fully fleshed out. So I have Mistborn already, like I have my own copy, but I don't know where it went and disappeared since I moved here back in May. So I figured I would just go to my local library and get my copy this way, especially if I don't end up liking this full series, because what if I read the first one and the second one's not as good? Who knows? I mean, I've heard really good things about the first trilogy, the first part of the series, but just in case, I have it here. So far, so good. The next one is Dawn by Octavia Butler. I've already finished reading this. This is a sci-fi. It is a part of a trilogy. Sometimes it goes under a different name, like when they bundle all 3 books, but I think that's out of print at this point. Dawn is a weird book, and I mean that in a good way. Like, sci-fi is always going to run a little weird, especially if this is your first time entering into it. This is my first time in a while that I've read a sci-fi book. Basically, this book, the protagonist Lilith is taken from planet Earth. So Earth is a wasteland. There was a big war and like there's barely anything left. So these aliens grab her. She is one of the last remaining survivors of Earth. And as the protagonist, as Lilith, you're listening to her thoughts, and she's very smart. She's very smart, like street smart, where she understands that even though these people rescued her, there's probably something they want in return. So a lot of the novel is her just questioning what their intentions are. But the aliens are described with having a lot of tentacles and stuff. It took me a while to get into it, or rather I was super into it, and then the more you get the world building of these aliens and their own hierarchy, the more confusing it gets. Not confusing, but I feel like the titles and the way she names them confuses me, and like it kind of makes you think about gender, sexuality, structures like that, and it makes you think a little bit more deeply about it, because you're introduced to an entire race of aliens that do things differently than we do. So it's really cool. It really makes you think. It's a little bit unsettling, not scary at all. It's just like pure sci-fi, trying to figure out what's going on, and the future of mankind. Is it worth saving? Stuff like that. I really liked it though. I've heard nothing but the best things about Octavia Spencer, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. Not just this trilogy, but like her other works, because I know some of them are a little bit easier to get into from what I've been told. So we'll see. We have a classic here. We have Jane Austen's Persuasion. I couldn't find a different edition of this book, so this is like the large text, and it's just super weird to read. So I tried reading this before I read Dawn, and I have a problem. Like, I'm not the best with classics. Unfortunately, like I consume like the film versions of them, but like for some reason reading them is a little bit hard. I'm gonna give it another shot though, because I have heard great things about this. So at 27 years old, Anne is engaged to this person and she really loves them, but then she listens to the opinion of other people. They end up not getting married or something like that, and then he eventually comes back from war or something, and he's richer and in a better place in terms of like status than she is. And she realizes that she probably made a mistake. So we're gonna see. Hopefully I could read this, because I would love to read more classics this year, but sometimes it's just really hard for me to get into them. So I already read this book. This is a middle grade book. This is When Life Gives You Mangoes. I read this right after I finished Babel, and Babel was such a heavy but beautiful and amazing book that I needed something super light and fun to like get me out of the hole that Babel had put me in. Babel, if you didn't know, it's like academia book, but it's really about colonialism, Great Britain, and it's sad but beautiful and super well written. I'm such a big fan of that author now, and I really want to like devour everything else that she has published. But that's basically the gist of Babel. So I wanted something light, fun, and this is a coming of age book, When Life Gives You Mangoes. The protagonist, Clara, lives on an island in Jamaica. She's grown up on this island. It's a very close community, and something happened the summer before. Something happened to her memory. She's suffering from memory loss after a hurricane the summer before, so she cannot remember anything from that time period, and she's kind of teased about it. She has a best friend, but they bicker a lot over silly things, and it's a very beautiful book. It's very sweet, but it takes a turn at the end of it. I can't even tell you what it is, because if I tell you that twist, it's definitely going to come across as a spoiler, because you're going to know instantly what I mean. But it takes an interesting turn at the end where I'm just like, whoa, I did not expect this in any way, shape, or form. But it is a very beautiful book, and it's a super light read. I want to say it is under 200 pages, 193 pages. So super sweet, super fun. I'm glad I picked it up. I haven't read middle grade in a really long time. I'm thinking of rereading the Percy Jackson series, because I read that a couple years ago and I barely remember anything. And I really love a series that has multiple installments, especially when they're good, because I feel like with Percy Jackson, for the most part, they were all pretty solid books. And I would love to hear or see if my opinion has changed now that I'm a bit older. All right, we have another Octavia Butler book. So when I was at the library, they don't always have what I need. So usually I'll request and pick up. That's what I did with most of these. But with Dawn and with this one, this is Bloodchild and Other Stories. I just picked it up on a whim because I was like, okay, cool, they have some of her stuff. So she's super famous for her science fiction, and I am so far a big fan. So I was like, let me read some short stories. It might be even easier for me to kind of get into. I don't know too much about it other than we're in a foreign planet where there's a bunch of humans living alongside some centipede-looking aliens. I hate centipedes so much, and that's all I know so far about this book, because it's Bloodchild and a bunch of little other mini stories. So we're gonna see. This is super short. I'm hoping I can finish it, get into that sci-fi-ness. We'll see if it's weirder than Dawn. Who knows? But I love how this smells. It has that old book smell, and it's great. The next one is The Children on the Hill by Jennifer McMahon. I don't know how I feel about this book now, because I have a feeling I know where it's gonna go. So, and I don't even know how to explain it. Basically, it's like a thriller. I think it's a thriller. It says it's a genre-defying new novel inspired by Mary Shelley's masterpiece Frankenstein, which I do love. It's like one of the few classics I can read. Frankenstein and Dracula. Basically, the protagonist, her mom, when she's younger, introduces like a foster child into their home, and apparently I think she's a little she's like described as feral. She has some issues. And then there's a line here that I don't like. Rather than Eric, she's just grandma teaching them how to take care of their pets, preparing them home cooked meals, and providing them with care, attention, and love. Then one day, Gran brings home a child to stay with the family. Iris, silent, hollow-eyed, skittish, and feral, does not behave like a normal girl. I have a feeling there's gonna be animal deaths. I don't know why I think that, but you know, in a horror movie where they introduce a child like who is the antagonist of the film, and they end up like killing like the pet cat or something, like I cannot stand that. First of all, I can't stand animal deaths anymore in media, like even if they're not real. Like for some reason I just have such a low tolerance for it the older I get, and I cannot stand, even though I love horror as a genre, whether it's film or literature, I cannot stand unnecessary killings. I cannot stand when you're trying to show that a kid is evil by killing a dog, a cat, or like in Gremlins. Like I'm not a fan, and I have a strong feeling this is going to have that in it. And I didn't hear that many good things about this. The reason I requested it was because I requested it at the beginning of someone's video that I was watching, and then I hit request, and at the end they're like, yeah, but I didn't really like this. I give it like 2 stars, and I'm like, okay, I should have waited to watch the whole video before requesting it. But we'll see. I might get to it. I might not. I'm not sure. I love horror. I love thrillers. I just don't like unnecessary deaths about animals. Like I just don't. Unless it's for a purpose, and in this case, it's just to show I'm assuming that there's something wrong with that kid's head. You know, that happens. Anyway, that is my library haul. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. January is almost over, and I'm just trying my best to keep reading and keep it strong, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I will see you next time. Bye.